Before you even reach the airport, something has already changed, and most experienced travelers haven't been told. If you've flown for decades and suddenly feel uncertain, that reaction makes sense. What's happening in airports right now is not about age, carelessness, or forgetting the rules. It's about quiet system changes that are being enforced more strictly than ever before. Over the past year, airlines and border systems have shifted how passports are checked, scanned, and verified. Many of these changes happen behind the scenes, without clear announcements, and they rely heavily on automated screening. Travelers who rely on long experience are often the ones most surprised, because the rules look familiar while the enforcement behaves very differently. I want to be clear from the start. If you've traveled safely for years, you haven't lost your ability to travel. Nothing about this moment is a personal failure. The confusion many seniors feel right now is shared by professionals who see these situations daily and know how preventable they are with the right information. This conversation matters because airport denials no longer begin at the gate. They begin weeks earlier, inside databases, scanners, and airline systems that don't explain themselves. When people are stopped, it feels sudden and embarrassing, even though the outcome was quietly decided long before. My role here is simple. I want to slow everything down, explain what has changed in plain language, and help you move through modern airports with the same confidence and dignity you've always had. What has caused so much confusion in 2026 is not the sudden appearance of brand new passport laws, but the way existing rules are now being enforced through newer systems. On paper, many requirements look exactly as they did years ago. In practice, however, airlines and border agencies are relying far more on automated verification, shared databases, and pre-departure screening than they once did. These systems do not evaluate context or experience. They scan for exact compliance. A passport that was close enough in the past is now flagged immediately. Small issues that once led to a quiet conversation at the counter are now stopping a trip before it even begins. This shift affects everyone. But seniors feel it first because many travel less frequently and rely on knowledge that used to be dependable. Another change involves responsibility. Airlines are now held financially accountable if they transport someone whose passport later fails entry checks. Because of this, staff are instructed to deny boarding at the first sign of risk. Even if an issue might be resolved at the destination, airlines are no longer willing to take that chance. This creates situations where travelers are turned away despite believing everything is in order. For older travelers, this can feel especially unsettling. Many have valid passports, decades of international experience, and careful travel habits. Being questioned or denied feels deeply personal, even though it is not. The system does not see age, intention, or history. It only sees data points that either match or do not. What makes this moment difficult is that these changes were not clearly communicated to the public. There were no letters, no announcements aimed at longtime travelers. Instead, enforcement tightened quietly. That silence is why so many capable, prepared seniors are being caught off guard. Understanding this distinction is important. The rules themselves are not suddenly hostile. The environment enforcing them has become stricter, faster, and less flexible. Once you understand that, the situation becomes far less frightening and far more manageable. Knowing this ahead of time restores balance. It explains why confidence alone is no longer enough, and why preparation now replaces improvisation. When seniors understand that denials are system-driven, not judgment-based, the emotional weight lifts. Clarity replaces self-doubt, and planning becomes a tool of protection rather than anxiety. This knowledge is the first step toward traveling comfortably again in a changing airport environment with full confidence. The 6-month validity rule is where most airport denials quietly begin, and it is also one of the most misunderstood rules among experienced travelers. Many people believe that if a passport has not expired, it is automatically acceptable for travel. That assumption used to feel reasonable, but it no longer protects travelers in today's system. The reality is that many countries require your passport to be valid for at least 6 months beyond your planned return date, not your departure date. Airlines enforce this rule before you board because they are responsible if a traveler is refused entry. Even if you plan a short trip, the calendar works against you in ways that are easy to miss. What often surprises seniors is that the passport can still show several months of validity and yet be considered unacceptable. A passport expiring in 4 or 5 months may look perfectly fine in your hand. To an airline system, it represents risk. The scanner does not care how long you intend to stay or how many trips you have taken before. Another common misunderstanding is believing that this rule is applied consistently everywhere. It is not. Some destinations enforce it strictly, others appear flexible, and that inconsistency creates false confidence. Travelers remember past trips where nothing went wrong and assume the same will happen again. In 2026, assumptions are what cause denials. This is why people are often shocked at the counter. They did not overlook expiration, they overlooked buffer time. The difference feels small, but the consequences are absolute. No discussion at the airport changes it. Understanding this rule clearly is not about fear, it is about control. When you know how the 6-month window works, you regain predictability. You stop relying on memory and start relying on dates. That shift alone prevents one of the most common and distressing airport outcomes seniors face today. For many older travelers, the 6-month rule feels unfair because it was not emphasized years ago. Passports were checked visually, conversations were possible, and discretion existed. Today, systems decide before people speak. That change removes flexibility, but adds predictability. Once you accept that the rule is mathematical rather than personal, planning becomes calmer. Marking renewal dates earlier than feels necessary is no longer excessive. It is simply adapting to how travel now works. Seniors who adjust this single habit eliminate a major source of stress long before packing begins. This understanding restores confidence because nothing is left to chance. Dates replace guesswork, preparation replaces worry, and travel returns to what it should be, a planned, respectful process that supports your experience rather than testing it. For seniors, clarity becomes the strongest form of protection in modern travel. Passport wear is one of the most uncomfortable surprises seniors encounter at the airport, because it feels personal even when it isn't. Many travelers assume damage means something dramatic: torn pages, water exposure, or obvious destruction. In reality, modern checks flag far subtler signs, especially on passports that have aged naturally through careful long-term use. Airlines and border systems now look closely at scannability. Pages that bend near the photo, corners that curl, ink that has faded slightly, or covers that no longer close flat can all interfere with machine readers. What once passed a visual glance can now trigger a warning before a human ever speaks to you. This is why people are sometimes told their passport is damaged without seeing anything that feels damaged at all. For seniors, this is especially frustrating because older passports often show normal wear from responsible travel. They were carried safely, opened carefully, and stored respectfully for years, yet age itself works against the document. Glue dries, lamination loosens, pages soften. None of this reflects carelessness, but the systems evaluating passports do not account for intention or history. Another quiet change is how discretion has narrowed. In the past, staff might examine a passport, assess its condition, and allow travel if information was readable. Today, if a scanner struggles or a database flags potential damage, staff are instructed to stop the process immediately. They are not permitted to override the alert, even if they personally believe the passport is usable. This creates moments that feel abrupt and embarrassing. A traveler who has flown internationally for decades is suddenly treated as a risk, not because of behavior, but because the document no longer meets technical tolerance. That shift is difficult emotionally, especially for those who value dignity and self-reliance. The key to understanding this change is separating personal responsibility from system sensitivity. A passport can be legally valid and still be functionally unacceptable. That distinction did not matter years ago. It matters deeply now. Once this is understood, the solution becomes calmer and clearer. Inspecting a passport with a fresh eye, rather than emotional attachment, is protective, not excessive. If anything feels borderline, replacement is not an admission of failure. It is an adjustment to stricter tools evaluating older documents. For seniors, recognizing that normal wear is no longer neutral removes confusion. It shifts focus from self-blame to preparation, preserving confidence and preventing distress. Name mismatches are one of the most common reasons seniors are denied boarding, and they are also one of the most confusing. To most travelers, a name is a name. If it looks close enough, sounds right, and matches what they have always used, it feels safe. Unfortunately, modern airline systems no longer see names the way humans do. Today, airline and passport systems require exact character matching. This includes spacing, order, initials, hyphens, and middle names. A ticket that shows only a first and last name while a passport includes a middle name can trigger a mismatch. A missing hyphen, an added space, or an abbreviated middle name can be enough to stop the process entirely. Seniors are affected more often because older passports were issued under different formatting standards. Many include full middle names that were never required on tickets before. Others reflect naming conventions that were common decades ago but are now treated rigidly by automated checks. Travelers rely on memory, not realizing the system no longer allows flexibility. What makes this especially stressful is that these mismatches are rarely visible until check-in. Everything looks correct on the screen. Confirmation emails arrive, seats are assigned, then, at the counter, the system refuses to proceed. Staff are not allowed to adjust or override the name even when the difference seems trivial. Another misunderstanding is assuming gate agents can fix the problem. In most cases, they cannot. Once the ticket name and passport name fail to align perfectly, the booking is considered invalid for international travel. This can happen even when the identity is obvious to everyone involved. The emotional impact is significant. Seniors often feel embarrassed, as if they made a careless mistake. In reality, they followed habits that worked for years. The system changed, not their responsibility. Understanding this risk early restores control. Verifying that the ticket name matches the passport exactly, letter for letter, removes uncertainty. It prevents a deeply upsetting moment that feels sudden but is entirely preventable. For older travelers, this clarity replaces anxiety with confidence and ensures dignity is preserved throughout the travel experience. This is why careful review at home matters more than ever. Taking a few quiet minutes to compare documents avoids pressure later. When names align perfectly, the journey begins smoothly, and seniors can move through the airport without fear of being stopped or questioned unnecessarily at the counter unexpectedly. Renewing a passport after age 60 feels familiar, which is exactly why timing traps catch so many people in 2026. For decades, renewal was something you handled when expiration felt close. You filled out forms, mailed documents, and trusted the process to move at a reasonable pace. That expectation no longer matches reality, even for routine renewals. Processing timelines have stretched quietly. Additional identity verification, cross-checking of historical records, and stricter photo validation now occur behind the scenes. These steps are not visible to applicants, but they add weeks or months. Seniors who wait until the last year of validity often discover that plenty of time disappears quickly. Another issue involves delivery uncertainty. Passports may be approved yet delayed in printing or mailing. Weather disruptions, backlogs, or document reviews can pause the process without warning. What once felt like a predictable timeline now includes gaps that are impossible to rush. This is especially stressful when travel plans are already set. Many older travelers rely on past experiences where renewing 3 or 4 months before a trip worked perfectly. That memory creates false security. In 2026, airlines expect passports to meet validity requirements well before departure, regardless of renewal status. A passport in process offers no protection at the airport. There is also a dignity concern that rarely gets discussed. Seniors often hesitate to renew early because it feels wasteful or unnecessary. Letting go of a still valid passport can feel uncomfortable. But modern travel systems reward caution, not efficiency. Renewing earlier is not an overreaction. It is an adaptation. The calm solution is adjusting the timeline, not the expectation. Planning renewal far earlier than feels intuitive removes pressure entirely. It allows time for corrections, photo resubmissions, or address confirmations without urgency. Seniors who renew with generous buffer time regain control and avoid last-minute stress. When renewal is treated as a protective step rather than a chore, anxiety fades. Travel plans feel solid again. Knowing your passport is unquestionably acceptable restores confidence and allows focus to return to the journey itself, not the paperwork behind it. This clarity supports calm, independent decision-making. Emergency passports and temporary travel documents sound reassuring, especially when time feels tight. For many seniors, they appear to be a safety net that guarantees travel will still happen. In reality, these documents carry quiet limitations that are rarely explained clearly. Airlines and border authorities treat emergency passports very differently from standard ones. They are often issued quickly, but they are not always accepted everywhere. Some countries restrict entry, limit length of stay, or require additional approvals that airlines must verify. Because airlines face penalties for transporting passengers who may be refused entry, they approach these documents cautiously. Even when an emergency passport is legally valid, it may still trigger hesitation or outright denial at check-in. Temporary documents also tend to receive closer scrutiny during automated checks. Systems flag them for manual review, which slows the process and increases the chance of refusal. For seniors, this is often unexpected because emergency documents were once treated as straightforward solutions. Today, they are considered exceptions, not replacements. Another risk is timing. Emergency passports are frequently issued close to departure, leaving no room to correct errors or misunderstandings. If a problem arises at the airport, there is rarely a backup option. This creates intense pressure in a space where calm decisions are hardest to make. Many seniors pursue emergency documents believing they are choosing flexibility when they are actually increasing risk. The intention is reasonable, but the outcome can be deeply stressful. Understanding these limitations early allows for better planning and fewer surprises. Standard passports, renewed with time to spare, remain the safest option for international travel. Emergency documents should be viewed as last resorts, not routine solutions. When seniors understand this distinction, they avoid placing themselves in fragile situations. Preparedness restores dignity by removing desperation from the travel process. With proper planning, emergencies become rare, and confidence replaces last-minute fear. That confidence is what allows seniors to move through airports calmly and securely. Knowing when emergency documents help and when they hurt protects both travel plans and peace of mind. This awareness transforms urgency into control and preserves independence during international travel. Airport check-in feels like a conversation, but in 2026, it is closer to a final verification checkpoint. This is where many seniors feel confused and embarrassed because staff may appear sympathetic yet still refuse boarding. Understanding why this happens removes much of the emotional sting. Airline employees are not making personal judgments. They are operating under strict liability rules. If they allow a traveler to fly and that traveler is later refused entry, the airline can face heavy fines and must transport the passenger back at its own expense. Because of this, staff are instructed to follow system alerts without exception. What has changed is the balance of authority. In the past, experienced agents could apply discretion. They could review a passport, consider circumstances, and make a judgment call. Today, automated systems decide first. If a warning appears on the screen, staff are legally required to stop the process, even when the traveler's identity and intentions are obvious. This is why conversations at the counter can feel abrupt. Politeness does not equal flexibility. Compassion does not equal permission. Seniors often misinterpret kindness as negotiation, then feel blindsided when the answer remains no. The refusal feels personal, but it is procedural. Another misunderstanding involves escalation. Asking for a supervisor rarely changes the outcome. Supervisors see the same alerts and face the same restrictions. Continuing to argue only increases stress and embarrassment without improving the situation. The most important shift for seniors is realizing where control exists and where it does not. Control does not live at the airport anymore. It lives at home before travel begins. Once you reach check-in, the system has already evaluated your documents. This knowledge is empowering. It removes the false hope that confidence or experience will override a system decision. When seniors understand that staff cannot bend rules, they stop blaming themselves or the people in front of them. Respecting this reality preserves dignity. Preparation becomes the true safeguard. By arriving at the airport knowing your documents meet every requirement, you avoid confrontation. That confidence allows you to move through check-in without fear of being judged. When a passport issue surfaces at the airport, what you say matters almost as much as the document itself. Seniors often believe explaining their situation thoroughly will help. In reality, calm, minimal communication protects dignity and prevents escalation during an already stressful moment. The first goal is not to convince or debate. Modern airline systems are not influenced by emotion, urgency, or history. When staff see an alert, their options are limited. Long explanations or frustration can unintentionally make the interaction feel tense, even when everyone is trying to remain respectful. The most effective approach is steady and simple. Ask one clear question. What specifically is preventing travel? Listen carefully without interrupting. Avoid phrases that imply blame or demand. This is not the moment to reference past trips, loyalty, or experience. Those details no longer carry weight in automated checks. It is also important to avoid language that escalates pressure. Words like urgent, emergency, or exception can backfire. They signal risk rather than resolution. Remaining composed communicates responsibility, not weakness. Even when the outcome is disappointing, calm communication preserves self-respect and often results in clearer guidance about next steps. Seniors sometimes worry that silence looks passive. It does not. Thoughtful, measured responses show confidence and understanding of boundaries. If boarding is denied, knowing what to say prevents embarrassment and emotional strain. This approach does not fix the problem at the counter, but it protects dignity in a difficult moment. The real value of this awareness is preparation. Practicing calm language ahead of time reduces panic if something unexpected arises. When seniors feel steady, they recover faster and focus on solutions, not self-doubt. Knowing how to speak respectfully and briefly restores a sense of control, even when plans change. This emotional readiness is part of traveling confidently in today's airport's environment. The safest place to solve passport problems is not the airport. It is your kitchen table, weeks before departure, when time is on your side. A quiet review at home removes nearly all of the stress seniors feel later because it replaces surprise with certainty. Start by looking at dates with fresh eyes. Check the expiration month, then count forward to your planned return, not your departure. If there is less than 6 months remaining, assume travel will be blocked. This is not pessimism. It is alignment with how systems now decide. Next, examine the passport as a machine would. Lay it flat and notice whether it closes fully, whether the photo page bends, and whether the cover has softened at the edges. If anything looks tired rather than damaged, that is still a signal to act. Machines do not interpret intention. Then compare names carefully. Open your ticket confirmation and your passport side by side. Every letter, space, and hyphen must match exactly. If your passport includes a middle name, the ticket should too. If anything differs, correct it early, calmly, and without rushing. Also consider timing beyond the document itself. Ask whether a renewal might be needed sooner than feels logical. Modern processing is slower and less predictable. Planning early is not wasteful, it is protective. Finally, store the passport properly once reviewed. Avoid tight pockets, bent bags, or loose storage. A simple protective sleeve preserves condition during travel. This home check is not about fear. It is about confidence. When seniors complete it quietly, they arrive at the airport knowing there will be no surprises. That certainty restores ease, preserves dignity, and allows attention to return to the joy of the journey ahead. For seniors who prefer reassurance, this routine can be done slowly, once, and then forgotten. There is no need for repeated checking or worry. Completing it creates a quiet line of certainty between home and airport. When questions arise later, you already know the answers. You have checked, confirmed, and protected yourself. That calm knowledge changes how you walk into the terminal. Shoulders relax, decisions feel lighter. Travel becomes familiar again, not intimidating. This single habit replaces anxious guessing with steady assurance, supporting independence while honoring the care you already take. That confidence travels with you through every checkpoint without question whatsoever. Many seniors do not travel alone in planning, even if they travel independently. Adult children often want to help, but the way that help is offered can either restore confidence or quietly undermine it. The difference matters more than most people realize. The most supportive role is not taking over, but partnering. Instead of assuming something is wrong, adult children can ask neutral, respectful questions. Reviewing a passport together should feel like teamwork, not inspection. Tone matters as much as accuracy. When seniors feel judged, they withdraw. When they feel respected, they stay engaged. A helpful approach is offering structure rather than instruction. Suggest sitting together to check dates or compare names rather than correcting mistakes. This keeps control in the senior's hands while adding reassurance. It also prevents last-minute panic that often comes from rushed intervention. Technology can be another quiet pressure point. Booking systems, online forms, and confirmations move quickly. Adult children can assist by slowing the process, reading screens aloud, and confirming details without rushing decisions. This reduces stress without removing independence. It is also important for family members to manage their own anxiety. Urgency and alarm are contagious. Calm planning communicates trust in the senior's ability to handle travel, even with support. When adult children approach travel preparation as collaboration, dignity is preserved. Seniors remain decision makers, not dependents. That emotional balance makes preparation smoother and outcomes better. The goal is not control, it is confidence. When families work together respectfully, travel becomes a shared success rather than a source of tension. Travel in 2026 can feel unfamiliar, but it has not become hostile to older travelers. The systems are stricter, yes, but they are also predictable once you understand how they work. The purpose of everything we have discussed is not to make you cautious, but to make you confident. When you know what is being checked, nothing feels personal or sudden anymore. International travel has always required preparation. What has changed is where that preparation matters most. It no longer happens at the counter or the gate. It happens quietly at home, ahead of time, where decisions are calm and unpressured. Seniors who adapt to this shift do not lose freedom. They gain stability. They travel knowing there will be no surprises waiting for them. It is important to remember that needing to adjust habits does not mean you are doing something wrong. It means the environment evolved. Experience still matters. Judgment still matters. What changes is how early those strengths are applied. Careful review, earlier renewal, and exact matching are not signs of anxiety. They are signs of wisdom. Confidence comes from certainty, not from hoping systems will be flexible. Once your documents meet modern standards, airports return to being transitional spaces, not testing grounds. You move through them calmly, without fear of being questioned or delayed. Travel remains one of life's great privileges, especially later in life. It connects families, honors commitments, and brings meaning through movement. With clear knowledge and quiet preparation, nothing about age limits that experience. You deserve to travel with dignity, without second-guessing yourself. When you prepare intentionally, the airport becomes what it should be again. A place you pass through, not a place that defines you. Calm preparation ensures smoother journeys and allows experience to guide each step with confidence every single time.